Have you ever noticed how avoidants seem to circle back to the same empath over and over again, even when it seems completely illogical? It's not just coincidence or mere habit. It's something deeper, something rooted in the very architecture of their emotional world. At the heart of this pattern is what I like to call the magnetic pull of familiar emotional dynamics. You see, human beings are creatures of familiarity. Our brains crave patterns, and when it comes to relationships, that craving is amplified by attachment history. For avoidants, the empath represents a pattern they recognize, not necessarily consciously, but at a level beneath thought, beneath reasoning, where memory and emotion intertwine. There is a comfort there, an unconscious reassurance, even if that pattern sometimes brings conflict, frustration, or heartache. It's important to understand that avoidants are not simply cold or uninterested in connection. In fact, quite the opposite is true. They are profoundly affected by intimacy, but their nervous system often interprets closeness as a threat. And yet, within this push-pull, there is something paradoxical. The empath provides what is simultaneously safe and stimulating: consistent understanding, emotional attunement, and an almost gravitational patience. This is what the avoidance psyche has been quietly seeking for years, even when they can't articulate it. The magnetism isn't about the person themselves, it's about the emotional resonance, the rhythm of being seen without being overwhelmed. Consider it from a philosophical perspective. Our attachments form the scaffolding of our inner world. Avoidants, like all of us, develop coping strategies to survive early emotional challenges. They learned, consciously or unconsciously, to withdraw in order to protect themselves. And yet, the very strategies that shielded them also create a void, a space of longing that remains unfulfilled. The empath, with their steady, non-judgmental presence, becomes a bridge to that void. It's familiar, it's known, it's predictable in a way that paradoxically allows the avoidant to explore closeness without the terror of complete surrender. There's a sense of safety in repetition, in the patterns that confirm this is how connection can exist without losing myself entirely. And here's where the subtle genius of the empath comes into play. By offering compassion without coercion, by reflecting the avoidant's hidden vulnerabilities without demanding immediate change, the empath becomes a living embodiment of a very old, very ingrained emotional template. The avoidant feels seen in a way that aligns with their internal rhythm, and that alignment feels like home, even when leaving or resisting would seem rational. It's why no matter how many times the avoidant distances themselves, they find themselves drawn back. It's a gravitational pull shaped not by logic or convenience, but by the deep architecture of familiar emotional dynamics that have guided their lives long before they could name them. So when you witness this pattern, don't mistake it for weakness, manipulation, or random chance. Understand it for what it truly is, a testament to the power of human attachment and the profound effect of emotional familiarity. The avoidant isn't running toward or away from the empath. They are responding to a force older and wiser than their conscious mind, a force that whispers, here is safety, here is recognition, here is the rhythm I know. And the truth is, in that very pattern lies a hidden opportunity, because once you recognize the magnetic pull for what it is, you begin to see the cycles, understand the motivations, and gain the power to navigate them consciously rather than unconsciously. The magnetic pull is not a trap, it's a mirror reflecting not just what the avoidant wants, but what they need to finally meet within themselves. And so, remember this: the pull is real, the pattern is powerful, but the understanding of it is freedom. Now let's talk about something that often gets overlooked: the illusion of control. It's one of the most subtle yet powerful forces that draws avoidance back to the same empath, again and again. On the surface, it may look like the avoidant is acting out of desire, or maybe even guilt, or a fear of being alone. But beneath all of that, there's a more precise psychological truth. Returning to the empath gives the avoidant a sense of mastery over intimacy, a feeling that they can navigate closeness without being fully consumed by it. This is not conscious reasoning. They're rarely aware of it, but it's deeply embedded in the way their nervous system experiences connection. Think about it for a moment. Humans crave both autonomy and connection, and when those needs conflict, the mind seeks ways to have both. Avoidants are experts at this. They want the comfort of emotional intimacy, the sense of being seen and understood, but they fear the vulnerability it requires. And the empath, patient, steady, attuned, becomes the perfect solution. The avoidant can step into connection, experience warmth and recognition, and then step back without breaking the bond entirely. In a way, the avoidant experiences a simulation of closeness, a controlled environment where they can explore intimacy without losing themselves. This illusion of control is not manipulative in a simplistic sense. It is, rather, a survival mechanism. Early in life, many avoidants learned that closeness could be unpredictable, even threatening. Love could feel conditional, and the risk of being overwhelmed emotionally was very real. So their psyche developed a system: engage just enough to feel connection, but retreat before being exposed. And when they encounter an empath who consistently offers patience and understanding, that system lights up like a finely tuned instrument. The avoidant senses, here is someone who allows me to experiment with closeness safely. Here is someone who won't demand more than I can give. That sense of mastery is intoxicating because it reassures them. I am in control. I am safe. I can navigate this world without losing myself. But let's dig even deeper. Philosophically, this speaks to a universal human theme: the tension between freedom and attachment. Avoidants embody this tension in a very pronounced way. They crave freedom from emotional overwhelm, yet they long for the grounding that comes from deep connection. The empath, often unknowingly, becomes both a challenge and a refuge. Their consistency allows the avoidant to practice intimacy in small, measured doses, creating the illusion that they can control the depth, duration, and intensity of emotional engagement. It's as if the avoidant is saying to themselves, I can approach, I can retreat, I can decide how much of me is on the table. All while the empath holds steady, offering a safe space for that oscillation. And this is where the paradox becomes fascinating. The avoidant's attempt to control intimacy actually opens the door to something far greater than control: awareness. Every return to the empath is a rehearsal of vulnerability, even if the avoidant doesn't consciously recognize it. Each step forward, each retreat, is a subtle lesson in the dynamics of human connection, a mirror held up to their own fears and desires. The illusion of control gives them safety, yes, but it also gives them an opportunity to see, over time, the ways in which avoidance patterns limit both their connection to others and their connection to themselves. It's also worth noting that this illusion of control is not fixed. It's dynamic. The avoidant may feel mastery one day and doubt the next. The empath's role is crucial. They provide a stable presence that allows the avoidant to experiment, to test boundaries, and to confront their own resistance without judgment. And because this dynamic is familiar and reassuring, the avoidant finds themselves drawn back, not out of obligation, but out of a deeply embedded sense of rhythm. They come back because even in their withdrawal, they recognize the empath as a kind of anchor in a sea of unpredictability. So, when you witness this pattern, don't reduce it to manipulation or selfishness or weakness. See it as what it truly is: a sophisticated interplay of safety, risk, autonomy, and connection. The avoidant is seeking balance, a balance that the empath unknowingly provides. And this balance is the key to understanding why they return, why they hesitate, and why, ultimately, the cycle persists. Here's the truth that ties it all together. The illusion of control is not a trap. It's a doorway. It's the doorway through which the avoidant can confront fear, practice vulnerability, and over time, learn that true intimacy does not require abandoning the self. And the empath, with their unwavering presence, becomes the guide, the mirror, and the safe ground. Remember this: control is an illusion, but understanding it is power. Now let's move into something even more profound: the unconscious healing patterns that underlie why avoidants keep returning to the same empath. On the surface, it may look like a simple cycle of push and pull, a repetition of old habits. But what's happening beneath that surface is far more meaningful. Avoidants carry within them unhealed emotional wounds, echoes of early attachment experiences, messages they received as children, perhaps even messages they never fully understood. And these wounds shape not only how they relate to others, but also how they relate to themselves. The empath, with their unwavering presence, becomes a kind of living therapy, a subtle, ongoing opportunity for the avoidant to process, to feel, and to confront what has remained unresolved for so long. Think about this from a psychological perspective. Avoidants often develop strategies of emotional distance to survive early relational stress. Perhaps a parent who was inconsistently available, or a childhood environment that rewarded self-sufficiency over vulnerability. These strategies worked. They were adaptive. They protected the avoidant from overwhelming pain, but they came at a cost. Avoidants learned to keep parts of themselves hidden, to limit their emotional exposure, to create distance as a shield. And yet beneath that shield, there is longing. There is a quiet desire for connection, for recognition, for the kind of safety they were never consistently offered. The empath becomes a paradoxical solution to this internal conflict. They provide a space where the avoidant can experience closeness without feeling swallowed by it. They offer patience where the avoidant expects judgment, understanding where the avoidant expects rejection. And in that dynamic, the avoidant encounters an unusual truth. For the first time, or perhaps the first time in a long while, they are allowed to feel, in small doses, without fear. Returning to the empath is, in many ways, an unconscious attempt to access that safe space repeatedly, to keep engaging with the possibility of healing that the empath represents. But here's where it gets truly fascinating. These returns are not always intentional. Avoidants rarely sit down and say, I need healing, so I'm going back. No, it's subtler. Their nervous system recognizes patterns, rhythms, and emotional cues long before their conscious mind does. The empath reflects a stability and patience that the avoidant's internal world has craved, but rarely experienced. Each encounter becomes a rehearsal of vulnerability, a mirror held up to old fears and old desires, a quiet invitation to grow. And every time they return, the avoidant has another chance, another micro-opportunity to engage with parts of themselves they usually keep locked away. Philosophically, this reveals a profound truth about human growth. Often, the very relationships we struggle with the most are the ones that hold our greatest potential for transformation. The avoidant returns not simply out of desire or habit, but because the empath triggers what is deepest within them, the possibility of healing. This dynamic illuminates a timeless human paradox. We fear what will hurt us, yet it is often in that very space of challenge and discomfort that we learn to expand, to stretch, to meet ourselves more fully. The empath provides a safe field for that stretch, a constant presence against which the avoidant can gently push and explore. And there's more. These unconscious healing patterns explain why avoidance can seem so frustrating. They may withdraw just when closeness begins to emerge, only to return later. It is not cruelty, nor indifference. It is the mind's way of pacing itself through a terrain it has long avoided, a terrain that holds both pain and possibility. Each retreat is a test, a way to manage overwhelm. Each return is a step toward integration, toward reconciling the part of themselves that longs for connection with the part that fears it. So when you witness this cycle, don't judge it. See it for what it is, a dance of unconscious healing. The avoidant is drawn back not by obligation or by habit alone, but by the deep, quiet pull of possibility, the chance to engage with their own unresolved inner life, reflected in the steady presence of the empath. It is both a challenge and a gift, a paradox that, if understood, can illuminate the path toward true connection. And the lesson is clear. In the return lies an opportunity, not just for the avoidant, but for anyone who witnesses it, participates in it, or holds space for it. Every moment of patience, every act of understanding, every gentle boundary set by the empath is a mirror of what can be healed, integrated, and ultimately transformed. The unconscious pulls may guide the avoidant, but awareness guides us all. Recognize the pattern, honor the journey, and remember this: within every return lies the potential for profound growth. Now, let's explore the mirror effect. This is one of the most fascinating aspects of the avoidant-empath dynamic, and it helps explain why avoidants keep returning to the same empath, even when they insist, I need space, or I can't do this right now. The truth is, the empath reflects parts of the avoidant that they rarely allow themselves to see. It's not just about love or attachment, it's about self-recognition, the unconscious confrontation with aspects of themselves they have long suppressed or rejected. Every time an avoidant comes back to the same empath, it's as if they are standing in front of a mirror, seeing their own vulnerabilities, desires, and even contradictions reflected back without judgment, without pressure. The mirror effect works on a subtle but powerful level. Avoidants, by definition, have a tendency to distance themselves from intense emotions. They've learned to protect themselves by shutting down, distracting themselves, or disengaging from anything that feels overwhelming. And yet, the empath has a kind of emotional resonance that bypasses resistance. The empath doesn't push or force closeness. They simply exist with openness, with patience, with attunement. That presence allows the avoidant to recognize parts of themselves that they normally deny. The longing for connection, the fear of being exposed, the desire to be seen. And the strange paradox is this: the avoidant may resist the mirror, yet they are irresistibly drawn back to it. Psychologically, this reflection serves a vital purpose. The avoidance is not an absence of need. It is a defense against being overwhelmed. The empath offers a safe field in which the avoidant can explore the very emotions they've avoided all their lives. It's like holding a magnifying glass to a hidden landscape within the self. Painful, yes, but illuminating. Each return to the empath is a subtle engagement with self-awareness, even if the avoidant cannot name it. They are drawn to the reflection because it gives them an opportunity to confront, in a controlled way, the inner truths they often run from. Philosophically, think about what this means. We are all mirrors to one another, whether we realize it or not. Our relationships are often the clearest lens through which we can see ourselves. Avoidants, who are so skilled at denying their inner emotional landscape, find in the empath a rare clarity. The empath doesn't demand the avoidant change. They simply hold up a mirror. And in that reflection, the avoidant sees both the potential for connection and the walls they've built to protect themselves. That recognition, even if it feels uncomfortable or inconvenient, is magnetic. It is the reason why the same patterns repeat. The avoidant is drawn not just to the person, but to the opportunity to see themselves more fully, even if that process is painful. This mirror effect also explains a lot about the cyclical nature of avoidance. The avoidant may retreat, resist, or test boundaries, but the empath's reflection remains consistent. It reminds the avoidant of what they truly desire, of what is possible when connection is met with understanding rather than pressure. Each return is like a rehearsal of self-recognition, a way of practicing vulnerability without the risk of total surrender. The empath becomes a living symbol of both what is feared and what is longed for, a paradox that the avoidant cannot ignore. And here's the deeper truth. The mirror is not about judgment or perfection. The empath does not fix the avoidant, and the avoidant does not necessarily change immediately. What happens instead is awareness, recognition, reflection. And awareness is always the first step toward transformation. The return to the empath is not just a return to a relationship, it is a return to self. It is the unconscious pull to confront what has been avoided, to face what has been hidden, and to glimpse, in the eyes of another, the possibility of wholeness. So, when you see this pattern, recognize the profound depth beneath it. Avoidants are not simply indecisive or selfish. They are engaging in an internal dialogue that has no words, a conversation with their own unacknowledged parts. And the empath, through the simple act of presence, provides the stage for that dialogue. It's both a challenge and an invitation. And it's why the same avoidant keeps coming back, time and again, to the same empath. And the lesson here is simple but powerful. The mirror is not a trap, and the reflection is not a threat. It is a gift. It is the opportunity to see, to feel, and to grow. Every return holds a chance to meet not just the other, but oneself. The mirror shows what is hidden, and in seeing it, we find clarity. Now let's dive into something that touches the core of every human heart, the fear of emotional void. On the surface, avoidants often seem detached, distant, almost immune to the pull of connection. They push people away, retreat into themselves, and insist they need space. And yet, beneath that exterior lies a quiet, often unspoken truth. The fear of emptiness, the dread of being completely alone, is profoundly powerful. It's not just about missing someone. It's about the loss of emotional grounding, the absence of a presence that stabilizes the inner world. The empath becomes that anchor, and this fear of the void is one of the strongest forces drawing the avoidant back to the same person again and again. Consider what this fear represents psychologically. Avoidants learned early on that emotions could be overwhelming, unpredictable, or even dangerous. Love could feel conditional. Attachment could bring disappointment or hurt. And so, in response, they developed strategies of distance, of self-protection, creating emotional space to shield themselves. But the paradox is that this very strategy creates another kind of vulnerability: isolation. The avoidance protects against being overwhelmed, yes, but it also leaves a gap, a void where emotional connection should be. And the human mind, even when conditioned to protect itself, instinctively seeks to fill that void. The empath, with their consistency, compassion, and presence, becomes the natural magnet for that unspoken need. Philosophically, this is profound. Avoidants are navigating a constant tension between independence and belonging. They fear being swallowed by intimacy, yet they also fear the nothingness that comes when intimacy is absent. This fear of emptiness is not a rational fear. It is felt in the body, in the nervous system, in the silent spaces where connection or its absence resonates. And because the empath provides a reliable, steady presence, the avoidant's unconscious mind associates them with safety, grounding, and stability. The return is, in a very real sense, a return to security, to emotional nourishment that the avoidant cannot easily provide themselves. This dynamic also explains why the avoidant's returns can feel sudden or unpredictable. It's not that they have made a conscious decision to come back in the moment, it's that the fear of emptiness triggers a deep instinctual pull. The empath becomes a reference point, a place where the avoidant can restore a sense of balance, reconnect to emotional reality, and temporarily alleviate the void that their defenses have created. In other words, the fear of emotional emptiness is not a weakness. It is a fundamental human drive, one that operates alongside, beneath, and sometimes in opposition to conscious reasoning. But here's where the insight becomes transformative. The fear of the void is also a mirror of potential. It reveals what the avoidant longs for, but often cannot articulate: emotional presence, stability, acceptance, and a connection that feels both safe and alive. The empath does not need to fix the avoidant or fill the void completely. Their role is to reflect possibility, to offer a space in which the avoidant can confront what has been missing. Each return, each moment of re-engagement is an opportunity for the avoidant to explore the edges of their own comfort, to feel what they have denied themselves, and to recognize that emotional emptiness is not permanent. It can be held, witnessed, and gradually transformed. This dynamic also illuminates the cyclical nature of avoidant relationships. Retreat, withdrawal, and distance are all strategies to manage overwhelm, but the pull of the void is equally strong. The avoidant is caught between two forces: the instinct to protect themselves and the instinct to return to emotional grounding. The empath, through steady presence, patience, and attunement, becomes the fulcrum around which this balance is negotiated. And over time, the avoidant learns something subtle yet profound. The void is not something to fear, because it can be met with presence and understanding rather than avoidance. So when you witness this pattern, recognize its depth. The avoidant is not acting out of indifference or calculation. They are responding to a primal, universal force, the fear of emptiness. And the empath, through their consistent, patient presence, offers the avoidant a chance to confront, experience, and integrate that fear without judgment or coercion. This dynamic is not just about cycles of leaving and returning. It is about the slow, unfolding journey toward emotional awareness and resilience. And the lesson here is clear: the void is real, but it is not a prison. It is a signal, a guide, and a doorway. When met with presence and understanding, it becomes a path toward connection, both to others and to oneself. The absence we fear most often becomes the doorway to the presence we need. Finally, let's explore the paradox of growth and resistance, the tension that defines the avoidant-empath dynamic and explains why avoidants keep returning to the same empath. This is where everything we've talked about converges. We've seen the magnetic pull of familiar emotional patterns, the illusion of control, the unconscious healing, the mirror effect, and the fear of emotional void. Now we arrive at the heart of the matter. Avoidants are caught in a constant oscillation between the desire to connect and the fear of intimacy, between growth and resistance. And the empath becomes the stage upon which this paradox plays out. Think about it for a moment. Avoidants often want closeness, but not on terms that feel unsafe. They want love, understanding, and acceptance, but only in ways that allow them to maintain control, to protect the fragile parts of themselves they've hidden for so long. And yet, when they encounter an empath who offers patience, steadiness, and unconditional presence, something shifts. They are confronted in the most subtle and profound way with the possibility of growth. The empath challenges the avoidant not through words or demands, but simply through consistency and reflection. Every return, every moment of re-engagement is a quiet invitation. Here's a space where you can expand without being overwhelmed, where you can be seen without being judged. This is the paradox. The very qualities that attract the avoidant, The calm, steady presence of the empath also challenged their resistance. The avoidant may not consciously recognize it, but each encounter presses against the walls they've built. Each return is a rehearsal in vulnerability, a test of courage, a step toward integrating the parts of themselves they usually keep hidden. And it is precisely because growth feels risky, because it requires confronting fear, that the avoidant vacillates. They push away to protect themselves, then return to engage, then retreat again. It is a rhythm, a dance between desire and fear, between courage and hesitation. Philosophically, this is a profound lesson about human development. Growth is rarely linear. Transformation often requires oscillation, experimentation, and repeated exposure to what we fear most. Avoidants demonstrate this principle in living color. Their resistance is not a rejection of love or the empath. It is a protective measure, a negotiation with their own nervous system. The returns, therefore, are not random or capricious. They are the unconscious attempt to engage with growth safely, to stretch toward connection without being consumed by it. And the empath, with their unwavering presence, becomes both witness and anchor in this process. There is also a deeper psychological truth here. Avoidance and growth are not opposites. They are part of the same spectrum. Avoidants resist intimacy precisely because intimacy triggers the parts of themselves that need growth the most. The empath, in holding steady, provides a safe environment for that growth to unfold. They are a living paradox, both safe and challenging, both steady and transformative. Each return by the avoidant is a dialogue between fear and potential, a subtle negotiation with the parts of themselves that long for connection yet fear it. And what does this mean for the empath? It means that patience, presence, and boundaries are not passive, they are active forms of guidance. The empath does not need to rescue the avoidant, nor do they need to force change. Their role is to hold space for growth, to reflect the avoidant's hidden depths, and to provide a safe field in which oscillation between resistance and engagement becomes meaningful rather than destructive. In this dynamic, every return by the avoidant is both a test and an opportunity, a test of patience, a test of courage, and above all, an opportunity for genuine transformation. Ultimately, the paradox of growth and resistance teaches us something essential. Real change rarely comes from force or insistence. It comes from consistent presence, from allowing the other to face their own fears, and from offering space in which growth can happen organically. Avoidants return not simply because of desire or habit, but because the empath holds a mirror to what is possible. Emotional courage, self-awareness, and connection without overwhelm. And over time, this rhythm of return and retreat, challenge and safety becomes a pathway toward deeper understanding for the avoidant, for the empath, and for the relationship itself. So when you witness this cycle, see it for what it truly is: a dance between fear and growth, resistance and courage, retreat and return. And know this: every return, every moment of engagement is an opportunity, not just for the avoidant, but for all involved to witness the unfolding of human potential. The paradox reminds us, resistance is not denial, and return is not failure. It is the rhythm through which growth is born. So, when we step back and look at the full picture, we begin to see the hidden truth behind why avoidants always return to the same empath. It's not about manipulation, it's not about stubbornness, and it's not simply habit. It's about the magnetic pull of familiar emotional dynamics, the subtle illusion of control, the unconscious patterns of healing, the mirror they see in the empath, the fear of the emotional void, and the paradoxical dance between growth and resistance. Each of these forces operates simultaneously, often beneath the surface of awareness, guiding behavior in ways the avoidant themselves may not fully understand. And here's the most powerful insight: none of this is inherently negative. In fact, it is profoundly human. These dynamics reveal our deepest longings: to be seen, to be safe, to grow, to connect. The avoidant returns because at a core level, they are searching for wholeness, and the empath provides a unique reflection of what is possible. The cycle of leaving and returning, of retreat and engagement, is not a trap. It is a rhythm, a natural unfolding of the human psyche, learning how to navigate vulnerability and intimacy. For the empath, this is a call to awareness and presence. Your patience, your boundaries, your unwavering steadiness are not just acts of kindness. They are instruments of transformation. They hold space not just for the avoidant to grow, but for the relationship itself to evolve, and for both parties to meet themselves more fully. And for the avoidant, each return is an invitation to step into awareness, to confront fear, and to practice courage.